But I think before we start there, we're kind of going to ask you about your life a little bit and how you got here.
How I got here?
To OHOP and things too.
Well, my husband was a physician at Chance from when it started in 1957. So we've been in Gainesville forever. He knew some of the people who started this, you know, like Dr. Clough was one of them, and Dr. Lombardi, and he knew that this was going on, and so we were all interested in it, but he always said we couldn't afford it, so we didn't even bother with looking into it too much. But then eventually, you know, they had a place on 34th Street where they had a room just like an apartment here. And I was with a friend at the country club at a luncheon, and she said to me, I'm going to stop at the old Hammock place on 34th because they're going to give me a talk about what it's like. Why don't you come with me? So I said I would, and I was very impressed. They gave a very nice talk about, you know, what it was going to be, and showed us some of the apartments they were in the building. They had a little building of old Hammock, the whole thing. It was very attractive and very nice, and so I went back to my husband with all the information, and I said we should at least sign up, because at that time, I don't know what it is now, but for $1,000 refundable, you could be part of old Hammock. And so we went ahead and did that. And from then on, it was just, by that time, he had Alzheimer's, and so we knew that it was a good move to move to old Hammock. So.
Thank you for sharing, Miss Thomas.
Yeah.
For the record, this is Donovan Carter. I'm here with Marcus Chatfield, my colleague Marcus Chatfield. Today is February 23rd, 2022. I'm here with Miss Brenda Thomas. We're at Oak Hammock. So my next question for you is going to be, so you mentioned, I'll ask a different question first. What was Oak Hammock like when you first arrived? I guess, what were you most excited about when you came to Oak Hammock?
What was I most excited about? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I just thought it was very beautiful. The buildings were great. We had picked an apartment, and actually we had to wait until, you know, they let people in building 1 first, and then I had an apartment in building 2, so we had to wait. We sold our house before they were ready, and so we had to go live at the lake. I have a lake place, and so we lived over there for about 8 months waiting for Oak Hammock to be finished. But I just thought it was a beautiful place. We knew a lot of the people here who were running it, and the grounds and everything was, you know, beautiful. We both were quite impressed.
Mm. That's awesome.
And I joined the group right at the very beginning when we first met. The resident council meeting, so I became a member of that from the very beginning, before we all moved in, actually. We did it, we started when they were at that 34th Street location.
That's nice. Could you tell me, so earlier you mentioned that you or your husband worked at Shands Hospital, now UF Health, and
My husband was a physician at Shands, yeah.
okay.
No, I didn't work there.
Your husband was a physician at Shands. What type of medicine did he practice?
He was an endocrinologist.
Endocrinologist.
By the way, his father, he grew up in Gainesville, and his father was a physician, and both of them were interviewed by whatever it is you call yourselves. And so was I about 2 or 3 years ago, so. But that was a different topic. It was their lives, not Hammock. All right.
Well, thank you for joining us again. We appreciate it. Could you tell me more about your own history in Florida? Have you always lived in Florida?
Me? Mm-hmm. No, I was born and grew up in Argentina.
Wow.
And lived there, came up to college during World War II, and went year-round until we finished. In those days, you went to college year-round, so you finished in 2 2/3 year. And at that point, before going back to Argentina, my father was in the States on business, and I wanted to visit him in New York. And he said no, he was too busy. Could I just go visit my brother at Camp Crowder, Missouri? My brother was American citizen. He was born before my parents went down to Argentina. And so I went to visit my brother in Camp Crowder, Missouri. He was training young doctors to become soldiers. They had just finished their residency. And so I met my husband there.
Yes, you met him in Missouri. Okay.
Yeah.
And your husband served?
Oh, yeah. He went, soon after that, he went to Guam. Was there for a year. And then he came, I went back to Argentina, and then for a year, and then I came back, and we were married here in Gainesville, 1946.
Wow, that's lovely. 1946.
A long time ago.
Wow, that's lovely. That's very lovely. Wow, Argentina. What city in Argentina did
Buenos
you live in?
Aires.
Buenos Aires. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Capital.
I've never been to Argentina. I've been to Colombia, but never Argentina.
Oh, have you?
Yes.
Oh, you missed something.
Yeah.
Buenos Aires is a beautiful city. A wonderful place to grow up.
Yeah.
But then, of course, Perón came in and we had trouble. So.
I was going to ask you. It's like,
But before that, it was just great, yeah.
Before Perón, yeah. Wow, that's incredible. So your husband served for you in Guam, and during that time you went back to Argentina? Mm-hmm. Okay, and you came back to Gainesville in 1946 and got married. What brought you to Gainesville? His family?
To get married.
Oh, okay. Is his family's from Gainesville?
Yeah.
Okay.
His father was a doctor here. Basically, during World War II, there were only 2 or 3 doctors in town. So they used to work very hard. And there's the talk about Dr. Thomas being late getting home, and he'd be in his car going, and then he'd stop at a traffic light, and then he'd fall asleep, and then everybody would just go around him. Nobody was too tall. So he was well loved here.
Well loved.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay. So, coming back to, wow, that's fascinating. What's my next question. Could you tell me a little bit more about the changes you've seen here at Oak Hammock? The changes?
Changes?
Mm-hmm. Would you like the first to know?
Oh, well, there haven't been that many changes. We've had 2 or 3 CEOs in that sense, and everybody gets upset, and is he leaving or is he not leaving, and who's going to come instead, that kind of. But other than that, Oak Hammock has been a very friendly, very nurturing place that you make friends quickly with other people. I think I know everybody here, at least certainly by sight. And the dining rooms are open. Well, they were before COVID. And you could go in and you'd sit with people, and you always had a friend that you could talk to here. Everybody's been very, very friendly. And it's amazing because people are coming now from all over the country, not just Gainesville. I think at first we had mostly Gainesville and Florida people, but little by little the word is getting out, and we're getting more people from New York and other places. And there's always something to do. I do a lot of sewing in the sewing room, make quilts for the skilled nursing, and I still come out. I've just recently moved to assisted living a month ago because I need a little help, but I still come over here and sew during the day, and that little chair helps a lot, so I don't have to walk long distances. No, I think Oak Hammock has always been friendly, and it's still friendly. And I don't know, we have a relatively new CEO, and things may change a little, but so far I haven't. We don't. And we've got this COVID over our head, but people have stuck to wearing masks and being careful, and so far, so good.
That's wonderful. You say you sew when you
Yeah.
Did you always do that, or is that something you learned how to do here? Or?
No, I've always done a little sewing. In fact, in my home here, I had a sewing room, and I had a nice big long table that had a machine in it. Brought it, and it's sitting in the sewing room. That's where I still sew at my table. I didn't have room for all of that in my apartment, so they were, from the very beginning, I asked if I could have it in the sewing room, and it's downstairs, the sewing room, and
wow.
A lot of ladies do that, and we make the quilts for skilled nursing, and then they take them and give them to everybody. It doesn't have to be somebody from Oak Hammock over there. They give it to anybody which is nice. And I think people appreciate it.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah.
I think we still have some quilts that my grandmother sewed.
Oh, really?
A long time ago in my parents' attic somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Years ago, people used to do a lot of them. I have 1 or 2 from my mother-in-law that she made here in Gainesville. Yeah.
Do you remember?
But we make just the laptop, the ones that go over your lap. We don't make the great big ones anymore.
Do you remember who taught you how to sew, or when did you start?
Who taught me how to sew? Ooh, I think my mother did, and I also went to some sewing classes in Argentina. I learned how to sew there. So it's a long time ago. I don't remember who taught me. Right.
I think that's such a unique hobby, I think. And I think it's fascinating because you're creating something still, and it takes a different a more creative type of patience, I feel, and I respect that.
Before you all leave, you should go down to the lower level and go down that hall, and they have cabinets with some of those quilts there shown. Also, the woodworkers have their cabinets showing what they do, and the sews. We also have people who cut out pieces of material so that we can just go look and see what materials we like that we might put a quilt together. And so we do that it's fun. Yeah.
It seems like a lot of fun.
It gives us something to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Wow. Do you have, or what are other activities that you participate in
here?
Okay, or elsewhere?
Well, I used to do a lot of walking around the campus, but that unfortunately is not possible now. What else do I do? Oh, I play bridge. Not very often, but this afternoon, every Wednesday, we play bridge in one of the ladies' apartments. And I was I was head of the Travel and Events Committee for many years here. And I was on the council for several years. 3 or 4 was voted on that. So I was doing a lot of things. But in the last year, I've just sort of stopped doing all that and resting on my laurels.
That's not a bad thing.
Right. Well, I'm getting older, and it's not, I guess I don't have the energy that I did before.
Bridge playing, wow. I think you're the first resident we've talked to who's talked about games.
Really?
I think
well, there are a lot of people play mahjong, and I don't, because they do it too early in the day, but they play mahjong, and they have Scrabble. They have different groups that play all kinds of card games and things. We used to have one in the evening where we'd play Mexican trains, stuff like that, So, but those, because of COVID, they sort of little by little, shut down, and they haven't started up again as much. A lot of people that play bridge, but they play bridge in the different apartments and don't do it in the big like we used to. But people do. There's always something that they're doing, so people are very active here.
That's wonderful. I never learned bridge, but my my grandmothers play dominoes, and they play spades still, and that's big in my family is spades.
Yeah. One game that I sort of saw coming from Argentina, because I hadn't seen it before, was canasta. Have you ever heard of canasta? Mm-mm. That was a game that they played a lot here. But, well, a lot of games.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Let's see. Marcus, do you have any questions?
Well, you mentioned being appointed to the Residence Council.
Yeah.
And I wonder what was that like? What kind of?
Well, we would have there were 12 people on the council, and you were voted on. So, and they meet once a month and talk about the different things that are going on, and each member was in charge of one of the things. Like, for instance, I was mostly in travel and events because I was a travel agent the last 20 years of living separately. And there was a travel, there was health and well-being. There are all these different committees that are part of the council, and the council still does meets once a month, and they discuss topics that are of interest to Oak Hammock. So you must have heard about that before, didn't you? That council, yeah.
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 Yeah, and we spoke with Mr. Gilkey.
Oh, Gilkey?
I think
Yeah,
he was part of organizing some of the travel groups.
Right. He was on my committee for a while, and then when I left, or when I was not in charge of it anymore, then he did it for a while, and he's done a lot of trips for people. This is one of the things we did as a travel and events committee. We would organize trips all over Florida, mostly day trips in the bus, and you'd sign up and you could go. So we went to different places. He's got one now going to, what's it called, village, Children's Village, where they let children who have problems and are maybe dying to go there with their family for a week. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
So he's very interested. He was interested in that when he lived in that area, and so he's taken Oak Hammock on about 3 or 4 different trips to that place. And so we'd go to the beach for lunch, and then we'd get on one of those boats that would go along the St. Johns River for a day trip. We did quite a few things like that.
It sounds like you've had quite a few adventures. That's really exciting.
Right.
You also talked about being a travel agent before.
Yeah.
Where?
I was a travel agent here. Well, I hadn't worked at all. I had 4 children to bring up, and so that basically is what I did. But by the time my youngest was, well, I guess she was 17 or something like that, I decided it would be nice to do something different. And Mr. Emmer, Phil Emmer, wrote a piece in the paper about he was going to start a travel agency, and it was going to be the best in the in the world. And so I thought, well, I could do that. So I sent him a letter, and then he answered back and wanted an interview. And before he answered back, my neighbor, who was a banker at the time, he's not in this Gainesville anymore, we met at picking up our mail up at the front of the house, and I said I had applied for this job. Oh, he says, well, good. And he says, because I loaned him the money to open the travel, and I'd be sure that he interviews you. So I did. And I remember Phil saying, how long did I think I would like to work? And I said, oh, well, a couple of years, you know. And I ended up 22 years with him, so that's the way life is, right?
It really is, it really is.
But I enjoyed that, and I did a lot of more traveling. I had done quite a bit as a child, because my parents did a lot of it. But as a travel agent, I did a lot of trips, went back to Buenos Aires, and so.
Where else did you go as a travel agent? What are some
Where did I go?
Yeah, what are some trips that stand out to you?
I went to Turkey. I took my older daughter to Turkey. These were invitations by different companies who would try, and they would send a travel agent so that we would sell the trip, sort of thing, you know. But they were good. They were very good trips, and we went to Turkey. I've been to Argentina twice. Europe. I've been to London a number of times, and so I've been several places.
That's incredible. I've never been to Turkey or the Middle East, anywhere that way. Farthest east I've been was Spain, but never London.
You seem to go to all the Spanish speaking. Do you speak Spanish?
I do.
¿Habla español?
Sí, hablo español.
Ah, ¿dónde aprendió?
Todos los años en escuela. Empecé a aprender en sexto grado en escuela media.
Yeah.
Sí.
We just feeling him out. That's great. Good.
Thank you. Well, have your children been to have you taken your children to Buenos Aires? Have they met their grandparents? Or?
Have I taken my children to Buenos Aires? Yeah, I took my two daughters to Buenos Aires. We went in 2011, and most of my friends were still living, and boy, they really put out the red carpet. My one good friend told all her children, "You've got to take Brenda here, and you've got to take Brenda there." And we went to all the places that I had been with as a child, and as the country clubs where I played hockey, and where we went swimming, and so it was fun. And my girls just had a great time. My son, who didn't go with me because he was busy, keeps saying that I should have taken him too, but now it's too late.
Yeah.
Right.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful.
You've got all your questions asked?
I don't know if I have any more about... I don't know if I have many more. Do you guys have any more questions?
Well, to bring it back to Hammock,
Yeah.
and you kind of already mentioned what appealed to you at first, and the display, showroom kind of on the office on 34th. Do you remember your first impressions of Hammock, and anything that particularly stood out to you as making it a special place?
Well, you mean once it was built? Or in the showroom?
In the showroom, initially.
In the showroom.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I was really impressed in that they had taken this, you know where it was? It was sort of right across the street from Publix, near where now it's UF Florida Hospital, but it was in that first sort of little shopping area, almost across from the post office and right there. And they had taken this whole area and built an apartment in the back, and they furnished it. It was a one-bedroom apartment, which is just like some of the ones we have here, and had it all furnished, and they to show us, what it would be like. And then they had the little building, they had built it of the whole complex and the grounds and everything. And they had people there who really knew what they were talking about. And so I was impressed. And so it was, I don't know, all of that combined, I guess, that it sounded like it was going to be something that was going to go. You never know with these things when they just start building them whether they're going to get off the ground or not. But we definitely felt that it was going to go off the ground, and it'd be worth living there. And my husband was, as I said, getting a little bit feeble, but we got a nice apartment, and we lived in it for maybe 5 or 6 years before he needed to go into memory support. So he went into memory support, and that's another thing that I think is so good about Hammock, is that it has these other areas where if you need it, you can go. Skilled nursing, of course, but memory support was, by that time, he really couldn't take care of himself, and it was getting harder and harder for me to take care of. So, but he was very happy there, and they had a lot of good help, and they took great care of him. So he was there for a number of years before he died. And so then I decided that the apartment I had was basically a little bigger than necessary, so when a smaller one opened up, I moved into it. And then just in December, I moved over to assisted living, which is very good too. You should all go down and see some of those areas.
So when he was in memory care, how far away was your apartment?
Well, my apartment is basically down the hall here and up one floor. And in memory support is way in the back of the building part on the other side of that Duckworth Gardens and beyond. And memory support's over there. Assisted living is basically over here. So I had one of these carts with a seat, that you see people carry. And so he would use that, and if he got tired, he would sit down in it, and then I'd push him along. But basically, we did it. I brought him home every night. We'd have dinner together, looking at the television. And then when he'd get real tired about 8 o'clock, I'd take him back, and they would take care of him. And they did take very good care of him. So, for that reason, Hammock is great in a lot of different ways. When you need it, when you're sick, when you're partly needing some help or just a little bit of help. And they're even talking now about having a new system where if you were at home in your apartment and you needed some help, which was the reason I left. I'm having trouble with my legs, and I have to have these elastic stockings put on every morning and taken off at night. I couldn't do that alone. I just can't do that. And you ask your neighbor to do it for a couple of days, but you can't keep asking them to come over. So then but now they're thinking of having a system where you could get somebody who works in assisted living to come over to your apartment for an hour, and then, in my case, take off my stockings or put them on, and do the same at night. And if they do that, you pay for that, of course, a little extra. But I think that would be a great idea. So they're working on that, I think. So they're always trying to put up new things and new thoughts.
And how was it adapting to COVID?
Well, that was hard all around, I guess. They put restrictions, and for instance, about a month ago, a whole bunch of people took the swab test, and about 80 came positive. Well, that was a huge scare. And so they closed the dining rooms, and everybody had to eat in their apartments, but they would get their food delivered to them, that sort of thing. And that happened also at the beginning. But then when all those people quarantined, and then they were fine, and most of them without any symptoms. Then now we're slowly opening again. They're opening the dining room, just one dining room, and allowing guests to come into the commons area, this area, which they didn't for a while. So the COVID did mess us up. It messed me up in the sense that one of my children is mentally retarded, and she lives at Takachali. I don't know if you know. It's a home for, you know it? Yeah. And they're closed down because of it. And it makes it hard for her. She doesn't understand that. And so we're hoping that the restrictions will be lifted soon. And then I bring her back and she spends the night with me. So that's it.
Did you start using Zoom or any of the online?
Oh,
yeah.
Zoom. And they're very helpful. I'm not very good at computers and all that, but they give you the link, and all I have to do is press and get on the Zoom. And I do that with some of the meetings that I have with people in Gainesville, because I still have friends here in Gainesville. I've lived here for, 60 years, so.
And did you say that your daughter, who is mentally retarded, does she come stay? Did you say that she still comes to stay with you?
Oh yeah, she can still come and stay with me. When I had the apartment, she would stay. I had an extra room, and I had a single bed there for her. Now that I've moved to assisted living, which is a much smaller apartment, I did, before I moved, say that I wouldn't move unless she could come and do it. So I put my foot down a bit. So she hasn't come yet because of but I will insist. Because that just gives, and it'll sit in the middle of the living room for the night, but who cares? So she and I have I just gave up my car. They decided that at 99 I shouldn't drive, but I drove anyway. But I did give my car to my granddaughter, and she took it to Christmas. And but I have a son who lives at our lake place, and so he's very good about coming, take me out if I need to go.
Wow, I didn't know that you were 99.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately.
I never would have guessed that.
Thank you.
Never.
Yeah.
Same. I wouldn't have guessed that. Wow, 99. So, wow. We get that. We say that frequently about the residents who live here. 99. Wow. And I never would have guessed it. I wouldn't have guessed it.
Yeah, June will be 100. That sounds terrible, doesn't it?
Wow. It's amazing. That's incredible. That's so incredible.
Well, that's the way it is.
What date, if you don't mind me asking, June?
June 30th.
June 30th.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
I thought you knew it because, no, you didn't have it in mind. Oh, yeah, Dr. Who was it who it was Popel. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've known him for forever in Gainesville. Mm-hmm. He was for the university, too.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you pronounce his name, Popel, and not Popple?
It's Popple.
Okay.
Yes, it is Popple. I say Popel sometimes, but it's not. It's Popple. Right.
Wow. I want to, I want to ask you about, I hear residents talking, earlier you mentioned how you're active in sewing and you do that. Mm-hmm. You talked about you play bridge as well. Another activity I hear about from residents is the ILR, so the lectures that
Oh, yeah, right. The ILRs, yes, I used to go to those. Mm-hmm. I haven't been since COVID stopped, and I just haven't. Well, I've been moving, and when you move from an apartment to a little box of an apartment, you got all this stuff you got to do something about. So I've been going through papers and stuff like that. So I haven't been too, looking into it. But ILR is good. They have people from the university come and give lectures and. Yeah.
What are some of those lectures that have stood out to you that you've been to?
Oh, they lecture about anything and everything. Let's see, I'm trying to think of one or two that they're having now. I don't know. I know they had a talk from a lady who was just taken over the exercise programs. She's got a gold medal. She was on the hockey team that won, and so she gave a talk and brought her gold medal and passed it around. Wow. I missed it because I forgot to put it down on my calendar. But they talk about, there's a Mr. Names are just always the hard thing for me to remember is people's names. But we have a professor of history who was at the university, and he gives lectures on Europe and, on all kinds of parts, because he spent a lot of time in Germany and England. And he talks for a whole hour without a note in front of him, which is amazing. And he's very good, and we always hope that he will give a lecture during the year, but he hasn't given one in a couple of years. So.
Wow. That's quite incredible. I wouldn't have thought an a gold medalist hockey player would come to Florida of all places.
Well, right. I missed the lecture, so I don't know whether she's a Floridian originally or not. But I do go to that physical, and I'll corner her and find out. Yeah. But they said she was very good. Yeah. Now that's a machine, isn't it?
It really is. I don't know.
All right, are you done?
I don't have anything else. Is there anything else you want to say? Is there anything else you want to?
No, I can't think of anything.
No? Well, I guess here's a good question. What do you want for your 100th birthday?
Not a thing.
No, nothing, no cake?
No, well, what I would like is to have all my children come and grandchildren.
How many grandchildren?
I have 7 grandchildren, and they're all either just through college or in the last year of college and working in Washington. And I have one granddaughter who's a doctor in New York City, so that's it would be fun to have them all back here. Yeah. They did come during December at different times to help me. And my granddaughter would take a drawer and she'd go through it, and well, Nanny doesn't need all this, so she'd throw it in the trash can. I had to be very careful to go look. But if I didn't have them to throw half of it away, I wouldn't have been able to get into the apartment.
You would have kept all of it.
Right.
Yeah, so grandkids are good for something, I guess, right?
What?
I said, I guess grandkids are good for something, right?
Right, yeah. Well, it's nice to have met you, and so you're going to do some more traveling in South America?
I hope so. I want to go. I think I'll be going back to Colombia in May to do my master's thesis.
Really?
My master's thesis there, yes, ma'am.
In what?
My master's is in Latin American Studies here at UF. So I'll be doing kind of interview work. There was a protest a year ago a year ago in May in Cali, Colombia. So I'll be going and interviewing protesters and stuff like that. So
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, it'd be very fascinating.
So you all work at the university?
We do.
Yeah. In what department?
The oral history program. It's in the liberal history department.
Yeah. Well, I remember, what was his name? The one who started this oral program?
Samuel Proctor.
Yeah, we knew him years and years ago, but it's really taken off, hasn't it?
It really has.
Yeah.
What do you remember about Samuel Proctor?
That he was sort of a chunky fellow, short and chunky, and well, I didn't know him real well. You know, my husband knew him better than I did, but he was smart, yeah. So were the people that worked with Lombardi to start off Hammock. They were all smart. They had a whole bunch of people with different ideas of, we really need a place where we can retire in Gainesville, and we need to do it and do it well. And if we're going to do it, you know, it has to be first class. And I think Lombardi said that many times. And Lee Clough, who was head of medicine at that time, and of course we knew him very well, he came and gave a lot of ideas, but he got to be so pushy with his ideas that Lombardi finally asked him to leave. So he wasn't with the group in the end, but there was a couple here, I've forgotten their name, but I knew them well, and he was with the university, and he was one of the ones who gave them the ideas of how it should be put together and how it should work. What was his name? He lived right across the hall from me here, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Thomas. Appreciate it.